Welcome back. Episode 12 of the podcast. Can you believe I haven't been canceled? 12 episodes I get to do this. I'm Steve Govett. I'm doing the TFL Podcast. We love to have guests on from around the National Lacrosse League's history, and these two guys represent the Rochester Knighthawks in a big way. They were the heart and soul of that entire Rochester Knighthawks group with Paul Gate and Dewey Jacobs and a number of other guys, which we'll all get into in the future. But so excited to have Regy Thorpe and Randy Mearns from the history of our game. Certainly Canada, U.S., as it crossed the border, you guys were at the forefront of bringing pro lacrosse to the city of Rochester and beyond. So thanks, guys, for being here. Excited to have you, and let's get into it.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
So I was thinking in the shower, because I think about you two in the shower a lot, and I was thinking this morning, what we have here, and I'm glad that they wore the shirts that they wore, because two current coaches of their respective countries, right? The Team Canada head coach for the outdoor team, and then the Team Canada indoor coach in Regy Team USA indoor coach, my bad, for international competition. I mean, you guys are at the pinnacle of the game. And what I was super excited about was just this juxtaposition here. Mearns coaching outdoor for Canada and Regy coaching indoor for the U.S. And one's Canadian, one's in America, but you're kind of coaching in the opposite guy's realm, if you will. Regy, obviously a long history at Syracuse and coached there and all that fun stuff and had an illustrious career playing. Mearns an illustrious career playing indoor and box lacrosse, and have moved on to coaching at Canisius for a number of years, and now you're at St. Bonaventure. And man, I just think it's crazy, and you guys both wore the shirts to match.
Well, I think the thing is when you kind of look at my wardrobe, the only thing that I have is actually lacrosse. I was actually thinking about what the hell I was going to wear today, and I'm going through, and I didn't have actually a plain shirt, so might as well represent with the Canada one.
There you go.
Right?
Well, it's funny. That's why I wore World Lacrosse, because I knew both of you guys were representing each of the genres of our sport and the countries on the mix. But when I left the Colorado Mammoth, I literally had no clothes. When you leave, right? You left Canisius, Mearnsy. It's like you got no clothes left. Same with Syracuse. You can at least sport Syracuse because you're an alum.
I got a ton of Syracuse gear, but no, it's been awesome. And we certainly got some bragging rights from the U.S. from the field World Games there a couple of years ago. But Mearns certainly has it for the World Indoors Championship for whipping our butt. So, well,
the fact of the matter is neither one of you guys had anything to do with either one of those wins, so it don't matter.
Yeah, you're pretty much right. When you look at the Team USA, Team Canada kind of rivalry, indoor, outdoor, and it's amazing because back in '95, when I look back at that first Rochester team, I was looking at the roster. I mean, phenomenal guys, but we were a pretty good mix. We had 10 American guys, we had 7 Canadian guys, and we had 6 Native American guys on that first original roster. And and then just as things kind of evolved and as this game's just kind of growing, just to kind of see the opportunities that we've had and just to be a part of it, just an amazing experience.
Yeah, that 95 team was a pretty good mix, Mearns. I was looking at it too there. We had certainly the good mix of Americans, Canadians, and Native Americans. It was pretty cool.
I guess the kicker back in the day, though, with the Canadians in those first, 95, 96, 97, because remember, for a good amount of that, we still didn't have guaranteed contracts, so you got paid, per game. And so, for the Canadian guys, did you really try to help out the American guys? Because the American guys were phenomenal athletes. And, was there that opportunity, if you helped them out too much as we all wanted to win, all of a sudden they could just take your job. So it was this kind of this balancing act, I think, for that first year or two was really a kind of a weird kind of metric, I think.
That 95 team is pretty good, but what do you guys want to talk a little bit about the final in '95? Or
I knew you were going to bring that up. So.
Yeah, thanks, Govett. That's great. Go ahead, Reg. Go ahead.
I got a bird's eye view of that. We're getting picked off, and Gary, being a lefty, coming over on his. I think he was ended up on his wrong side on the right side and put one through the I think the knees of Chugger there. But that was a great game. I mean, back and forth all the way. I mean, great crowd at the old Spectrum there. And I think Rexy or Ryder? Rex Lyons or Ryder tied it up late, right?
Tied it up, yeah, late.
Like that. And then
wasn't it like a cluster behind the net and all sorts of, the net got knocked off and the ball went in and it was controversial, but he ties it up late, sends it to overtime. And then something that we had been trying the entire game, Reg, because you were not a bad defender. We've been trying the same thing. The whole game hadn't worked. It finally works in overtime, but I guess I didn't see the goal because I was on my butt, but I don't think the video actually shows me on my butt, but I certainly enjoyed that game itself from a pinnacle of the sport in the Philadelphia Spectrum, because I think we ultimately played in the what's now the Wells Fargo Center, not too far after that, but that was the last championship that was won in that building. So yeah, thanks for that, fellas. Appreciate it. Mearnsy, who put the stick in your hand for the first time?
Gotta be, my father and my brother. My brother, 7 years older. He's got cerebral palsy, so he kind of got into sports. He was a goaltender, right? He had the bad left chicken wing. And you go down to the arena, you go down the old Port Bowl outside, and you go watch the practices. And, the next thing you know, you got to pick up a stick because now Rob needs somebody to shoot on. And so that was kind of the start of it. I just remember, every once in a while you're playing with the tennis balls in the backyard, and, sometimes you didn't wear a jock and you hit him in the sack, and then he would go run around with this big wooden stick. And my old man would be coming out. He was a factory worker. He's drinking some beers, and, he'd have to, save myself from my brother because I think he would have took my head off.
Is your brother still around, Mearnsy?
Yeah, still around. He's up in, St. Catharines. I got in my brain, he's kind of like my biggest fan in some sense. But he was kind of like my inspiration because for him, when I was growing up, at that time, he ended up getting into a lot of the Paralympics and, represented Canada, for about 8 years at the Paralympics. And, when I was growing up, it was, you didn't complain about things, and then if I started to, whine or bitch, complain about stuff, like he just looked at me like, well, what are you bitching about? Like, so, you just, you worked for everything that you got. And that was just the big life lessons that he taught me,
Hey, Reg, what about you? How did you get started in the game?
Well, we were going to Marjack's, which is an old sporting goods store out in Auburn, west of Syracuse. My brother was playing modified lacrosse, 8th grade lacrosse, and I was in 7th grade, and I never played lacrosse before. And went with my mom and my brother, and she asked if I want to get one too, so I ended up getting one. So actually, my brother Rory got me into lacrosse there, and never played. I picked up a stick, and I continued to play after that. And Rory, he ended up running a big wrestler and running track and outdoor. I played a little bit of lacrosse, but not much.
Is Rory your biggest fan?
Yeah, I mean, I got 3 older brothers. Rod, Ricky, Rory, Reggie. So you
got beat up a lot. Did you get beat up a lot?
That's why he's so damn tough.
I was the I was the youngest of 4, but all my brothers are. They were great to me. I mean, they weren't great to me. I mean, they rolled me up in a wrestle mat when I was younger. They chased me around with snakes. So my wife asked me why I'm claustrophobic because they rolled me up in a friggin' wrestle mat and left me there all the time. But hey, you had to get tough. You had to get up early to get the cereal and learn some good work ethic from my brothers.
Was the 2001 Heritage Cup? I can't remember if it was 2001 or 2002 Heritage Cup. Was that a highlight of your career?
100%. I mean, you put the roster together, and especially being Canadian, it was a little awkward for you probably, but it was a great group, and just to go up there and have all those, to be in a game with all those all-star Canadians, and it was special, and it was a special group. And I know you're part of it.
You weren't in that game, were you?
Well, what was it the Heritage Cup? I don't believe so. I know I was in an All-Star game one time.
Reg, isn't that funny how all the Canadian guys that are around that time don't remember that game? I don't remember that game.
Wasn't that significant?
It was like 26-9 or some damn thing. And the reason I got set up to do that was because Stan Cochran and Johnny Meridian wanted to put together this indoor world event. And I was in the U.S. I'd been in the U.S. for a long time, and I was running. I had a lot of U.S. connections with the Wings and the Power, and ultimately the Mammoth, and it was an opportunity to kind of look. I've been a huge proponent of U.S. box lacrosse for a long time, and so I was kind of the first GM of U.S. indoor, and put together what I think, as we look back, Reg, a pretty impressive roster that even today could compete with any NLL team. With names like Stilley and Hanford and Jalbert and Reese and yourself and Kevin Finneran and Dwight Mecke in goal. Man, I mean, Mike Regan, Tim Sudan. The list of guys was Marshall Abrams. Like that was such a great roster.
Yeah, it really was, and it was pretty cool for me because my son Gail came up with me that weekend, so he's actually in that photo on my shoulders there. It was an awesome time, and again, just to upset them was definitely a great moment.
Well, they can't take it away from us. I'm on the other side.
Mearns wants to say something, so
I know.
I got crickets. I got crickets.
It's like it's a scrimmage.
He doesn't even remember the game.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I don't even know what you're talking about.
So when you walked into the locker room for the first time in the MILL back in the day, Mearnsy, what was that like? What? Tell me the first time you walked in the locker room.
Oh God, that was Buffalo Bandits 92 going into 93. That 93 season, they had just won. Being at Canisius, got to watch Derek Keenan and Kevin Alexander and Richie and Darius Kilgore and all the boys. Back in the day, where all of a sudden Buffalo got to host the home game because they were selling out. And I remember walking into just to that first practice and going like, wow, like this is like some pretty legit talent. I kind of felt, because I played with a lot of those guys during the summertime, you're like, yeah, you know what? I think that, maybe I can kind of cut the roster. Because for me, it was just kind of like, wow, like there's actually 16, 17,000 people at the old odd. That first year in Buffalo. And it was like, wow, where you're playing in Canada and you're playing junior, and if you get to the Minto Cup, maybe you're playing in front of 1,500 fans. Typically, it's 300 or 400, and it was just like, wow, this is like professional lacrosse, And it was a pretty amazing experience. But then you found out pretty quickly that these American guys, because typically that Buffalo team was really stacked with more of the Canadian kind of group, was like, wow, like these guys are big, these guys are athletic, and it was such an amazing experience to kind of sit there and say, like, do you really fit, And then at that time back in the day, I mean, it's a little bit more self-deprecating since I was a smoker. I kind of figured out somewhere along the lines of where I could go in and maybe have a quick Demorier just in the bathroom. So that's old school stuff. I try to wean myself off. I'm good now, but I kind of felt like I was the Guy Lafleur back in the day.
Guy Lafleur, you were. How about Reg? You came out of an amazing career at Syracuse, and obviously that's a storied program where, that's a lot of Final Fours, right? And probably a couple championships under your belt and rings at Syracuse, and then you go to play indoor, and it's a little less traditional.
Yeah, I mean, it was I got out of Syracuse in 93, and Mark Burnham got me a tryout with the Buffalo Bandits in 94, and we had this huge snowstorm the tryout weekend, and I never went. So then the following year, Detroit Turbos or Rochester Knighthawks were the expansion team to the Detroit Turbos, which Mearnsy knows, and so I ended up getting a call from Rochester there. And it was just an amazing experience. Remember Barry Powell's calling, asked if I want to try out. And he's like, hey, you know what? Cross-check people, pick up ground balls, and work hard. I'm like, well, I can do that. And I never played a box lacrosse game ever. And we played some, American field box, but certainly never, real box lacrosse. But having guys like Mearnsy and Dewey and Peter Park and Brian Lemon and Chugger, and having some of those veteran guys, Sudan, just kind of help you along, even in drills, which are pretty basic for you guys. You guys are Canadians. You guys grew up since you're 5 doing box drills, and I had no friggin' idea. So just even being in line waiting, hey, what's the next drill? What side of the floor you should be on, and the little things that the guys are really great about it, and really took me under their wing and showed me lots. So I owe a lot to everyone on that team that helped me out.
Yeah, to follow up on that, Reg, I mean, back in the day in those like mid-90s, everything was, obviously box lacrosse, a lot of the pick and roll game, the slip pick. But at that time in field lacrosse, you never ever really went and picked the ball. Not like it is now. It's kind of evolved into that, where I think that was the whole pick and roll game. For the American guys from a defensive perspective, that was probably the biggest challenge defensive wise, to kind of get used to either we're slipping, we're communicating, but I think over a period of time,
the concept in field Mearnsy was you would never bring another defender to the ball carrier. Like that was like the stupidest thing you could ever do. I remember going to my first practice in college, and I go to college and I cross-checked the shit out of somebody, and then I set a pick on the ball, and I thought I was going to get sent home on the next train. Like, why are you here? You're an idiot. So, it worked out, I guess.
How much when you were away did they try to get you to use your weak hand?
They're still trying to do that. They're still trying to do that with kids, trying to get them to use their offhand or whatever. It's like, have you guys never watched the Gate Brothers play? Like, I mean, I don't pretend to be Gary or Paul, but I'm pretty okay with one hand. So it didn't seem to hinder a lot of guys, and a lot of guys that are in college today that are doing okay with one hand.
Cali BBQ is proud to be an official sponsor of your San Diego Seals. Buy our slow smoked barbecue at any Seals home game or online anytime at www.calibbq.media.
You know what, fellas? You talked a little bit about teaching the Americans the game, which is inherently what we all like to do, is teach and grow the game and help guys get better on our team that are going to be on our team and next to us. But was there like an inherent tension between the U.S. guys and the American guys?
I mean, not on our team. Like I said, everyone, they wanted to win. We had a great locker room, great leaders like Mearnsy and Dewey and Pseudo. And like I said, I mean, big Peter Park back in the day, right? I mean, those guys were great, and they really, I think, obviously the first trial, there probably was a little bit of tension, because the Americans didn't know where the heck they were going. Probably besides Pseudo, because Pseudo was playing with the Blazers, I think, at the time, and got
he'd come over from Boston. You're right.
And got bumped up, but so I think once we got through some of that, and they're like, we're helping us out. It was there weren't many tensions.
Well, and then I think as the roster kind of got decided, because back in that day there was 8 games. I think we played 8 games and then playoffs. Mm-hmm. So then you kind of got to bond a little bit. We had some weekend practices as the team kind of got selected, and then you're able to go out and get some dinner and hang with the boys and have a few refreshments, and you kind of get to know everybody and kind of realize. I mean, again, remember, no internet back in the day. I didn't know how great Regy Thorpe was or Timmy Sudan. I'm like, you just kind of meeting these guys going, I don't know, this guy's pretty gigantic. He's got good feet, and I probably wouldn't want to, go in the corner and get into a fight with him. And so you sit there and you kind of like watch him and just, so I think that all of a sudden we kind of got over this whole American Canadian thing, because we're just like, wow, like we're 20 guys, and and at the same token, we also had Paul Gates, so we knew we were in every game.
You know what, Rochester, one of the Reggie, I actually watched a game. You were probably in this game, but I watched highlights that made it to Twitter yesterday. That was Syracuse played Team USA in an exhibition game. And the highlights from that game are all about Gary and Paul. And it was just funny to watch these two kind of beat up on guys wearing the USA roster, the USA uniform when they were with Syracuse. And they couldn't have been more than 18, 19 years old at the time. And they're beating up on all these guys that were, a lot older than them and a lot more experienced. You were probably in that game and saw it from one end of the field.
Yeah, no, they're a few years older than me. I wasn't in that game, but I was actually there watching it. So yeah, they're men. I mean, it's just unstoppable, right? And having play with Paul, then playing against Gary for all those years, and playing with him at the tail end of my career. I mean, they're special players, and big, strong, and they don't need 2 hands either.
So Rochester is like the Green Bay Packers of the National Lacrosse League, right? It's kind of like that independent market. But you guys both had a long, illustrious career in Roch Vegas, which everybody calls Rochester, Roch Vegas. Talk about that market. Talk about why it was special in the NLL.
From my perspective, I think that you really kind of got. I mean, back in the day, you really, had the opportunity to actually meet a lot of fans. I mean, we had Nabber and the Nighthawk crew and lacrosse. As much as there's a huge history of lacrosse in Rochester, it was more from the field standpoint with Nazareth and RIT and a lot of the colleges there. So I kind of felt like it was this natural kind of progression from a box standpoint. And then you got to interact with a lot of the fans, and again, it was relatively a little bit smaller. It wasn't the odd, it kind of held that 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 people at the Blue Cross. And it was just a little bit, it was kind of, it was just like homey. It was small. The crowd was right on top of you. And they wanted to, they supported you, they supported, they came out, the arena was always packed. And again, it's just really trying to like put on a show. But at the end of the day, we're all as we all kind of got together, we're just trying to win, and then after the games, just like old school stuff, it's just a different time maybe now, but you went back to the restaurants and you got to interact with the fans and get to really kind of know them. And then, they would go out and talk to their friends and more people would come. And I just thought it was just such a special place, and again, we had phenomenal players and phenomenal coaches. And, we just always felt like we were in contention to win, even with that mix of group, that mix of Americans, Canadians, and Native Americans.
So, Reg, how about you? Because obviously you're a Syracuse guy, and Roch wasn't very far away from where you grew up, right? So, how did that make you feel? That whole hometown feel for you?
It was awesome. I mean, where I live west of Syracuse, so it's pretty much 55 minutes doorstep to the Blue Cross Blue Shield. But it was, it's like Mearns said, it was a smaller arena, before they did some renovations, and I think it was like Mearns at 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people, but very intimate. And then, everyone used to get sponsored by Bud Light, a couple Bud Light tickets after. So the post-game parties were unbelievable. I mean, we had like Elvis playing, and there was thousands of people at the hotel, and they would rent out the ballroom. Remember, Mearns, the big ballroom? Yeah. And like, you just got to know everyone. You got to know, the fans, their kids, their parents, their grandparents. And it was really cool back in those days. It was connected and made you feel special. I mean, we weren't getting paid a lot of money. I mean, that was back before there's no PLPA, right, Mearns?
Yeah.
Sorry to bring that up, Steve, but the PLPA, but and it was just it was just guys playing for the love of the game, and going out after and very intimate with the fans and just getting to know everyone and kind of just build that from season to season. I mean, remember Gonzo? Was it Gonzo Mearnsy too?
Gonzo, Nabber. Yeah. Oh God, just a ton of people. Just a ton of people. Where if you seen them today, you'd be able to pick up on a conversation that maybe you haven't yet, that you left in 2003, 2004.
So what was your favorite road arena, though? I mean, I understand playing in – what I always found funny about the Rochester arena was that the center-hung scoreboard wasn't hung in the center. It was offset. It was this really weird – because the floor was really small, right? And then they extended it. They did a renovation. They extended it, but they didn't move the center hung. And so the center hung actually was like more over like one end of the floor, and it was always weird. What favorite arena to play in other than Blue Cross in Rochester?
Reg, you want to take that one first?
For me, I mean, it's the Spectrum and Odd. I mean, there's Maple Leafs Garden was fun to play in. We had the last game there, right, Mearns 8. So
yeah, let's bring that up.
But definitely like the Buffalo Odd was unbelievable. I mean, that place was always rocking. And then the Philly Spectrum. I mean, all packed barns, and when you ran out, fans yelling at you that you suck, and it was just great. I mean, you got up for it, So when you played in Buffalo, you played in Philly. I mean, it was you had to bring your A game plus to contend, and then when the home team would make their runs, I mean, you couldn't hear anything. So I mean, my first game I remember in Buffalo, then in Philly, I mean, I was like, holy cow. And then you got, because you play a couple seasons, you learn, and you help some of the younger guys out, because when those momentum swings happen in those barns with that packed, I mean, you can't hear anything, and and it breaks your back.
How many athletes today in any sport, including, the NLL or any other sport where you walk in, that actually got excited about getting booed and getting yelled at? Like I loved going to the Buffalo Auditorium, because I just thrived on these people yelling at me. It was really weird. It's a weird kind of, it was great to play at home, but I just loved playing in the Buffalo Auditorium because these people hated me.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And they were right on top of you back in the day too. And it was, 16,595 or whatever it held. Like, it was that was just absolutely, an awesome place to play. But I think that it kind of goes back to, hey, if they're booing you, you kind of know that you made it. You're doing something right. So if Govett's coming out, hey, you suck, right? Like, hey, right, I'm doing something right.
I must have been doing a lot right, because there are a lot of people friggin' swearing at me.
I remember we were playing in there was the All-Star game that happened to be back in Rochester. And at that time, I think Paulie Gate was in Syracuse, went to the Syracuse Smash. We're at the All-Star game, and we're doing the breakaway, this breakaway competition. And the fans in Rochester are booing him. And we're like, he's like, why are you booing me? Like, I just spent 3 years, won you a championship. And
in the skills competition in the All-Star
game. Skills competition. They're booing him. But maybe that's, hey, you're just one of the guys when you start getting booed. That's for sure.
And then when you used to go to the penalty box in the odd or the spectrum, I mean, I spent a little more time there than you, Mearnsy, but I mean, that was unforgiving, man. People chirping you, and maybe a couple beers surrounding your waters. They were relentless. I mean, relentless.
Chopper in Philly, right? You probably spent a lot of time with Chopper in the penalty box in the Spectrum in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's after like 6 or 7 years into my 15-year career, like, we actually became friends. So it was kind of like, hey, how you doing? How's the family doing? It was like small talk. Hey, good. Oh yeah, my son just graduated. It was hilarious.
We won a championship in '94 in Buffalo, and I ended up spending the night with the Cup. And spent a long night drinking with a guy named Harvey and Chopper with the Cup and myself. And I think the three of us stayed up. Drinking time, and the time they closed the bars in Buffalo is 4 a.m. So literally spent all night after the '94 championship drinking with those two knuckleheads, and so got pretty friendly with Chopper. I went back a few years later when they resurrected the Wings franchise. And he's still dressed up, still painting his face, and he's an icon. You talk about who should go into the National Lacrosse League Hall of Fame. I actually think we should put Chopper in the Hall of Fame. The guy's a complete icon in our game.
A quick break. This episode is sponsored by Manscaped.com. Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and hygiene. If you've been listening to our channel for a while, you know that we are big fans of Manscaped and their Perfect Package Essentials Kit, which is the world's finest all-in-one manscaping kit that makes manscaping safe and easy. And just when you think they've got it all figured out, they take it to the next level. I'm excited to be one of the first to confirm that after 18-plus months of research and development, the new Lawnmower 3.0 waterproof body trimmer has just been released and comes with a ton of new upgrades. Get 20% off plus free shipping from your Perfect Package 3.0 purchase when you use promo code SEALS20 at manscaped.com. That's code SEALS20 for 20% off at manscaped.com. Now, back to the pod.
How would you describe each other's game? I mean, Mearnsy, how would you, if you had to describe who Regy was as a player, how would you do it?
Oh, God. Ferocious, tenacious. He could cover anybody. So it was great matchups. Obviously you're going against guys, the Gary, Paul Gates, the Darius Kilgore, the Tavarises of those kind of, that kind of world. We had that matchup guy defensive wise. I think he was a phenomenal team leader. Maybe in the early parts, not really vocally, but just cared, would put himself in the positions of just getting, ground balls and loose balls and starting transition. And one of the reasons why, I think we were, we got better defensive wise, it was like we kind of felt like as much as we had Paulie kind of on the offensive side of the ball, and it's kind of like we got that guy. We had Reggie at the defensive side of the ball going, hey, well, we got that guy too. He just brought that to the table. And I think as he got more comfortable in terms of, playing box across on the defensive side of things, then I think that's where he started to find his voice a little bit more and really kind of, provided a ton of leadership to the squad, as we grew as a team,
So, Reg, other than hacking butts, what was the best part of Mearnsy's game?
I always said, that the best two-man game in the business, on the left side was Mearnsy and Dewey Jacobs. I mean, those guys could run a two-man game better than – I mean, we would see it in practice all the time. We know it's coming, and they would still get us there. But Mearnsy's just smooth, and unbelievable leader, captain of our team there, a guy, I looked up to immensely, learned so much from and just a gamer, right? It just high lacrosse IQ, always made the plays when they had to be made, and whether it's scoring a goal, getting a ground ball, setting a pick, chirping getting in the ref's ear and getting a little momentum back our way. He did it all for us, but boy, him and Dewey could run a two-man game pick and roll textbook better than anyone. Besides, I would say Kimbo and Colin Doyle and Mearnsy and Dewey were probably the best pick guys in the business there with the two-man game.
They were pretty good at it too. So if you could sit next to anybody in an NLL locker room, either present or past from another team, who would you pick to sit next to?
Yeah, for me, it would be for me it's Darius Gilgar. Mm-hmm. I just felt Darius, and maybe just because of having a long history of playing against him when we were 6-7 years old all the way up. He played with his brother Richie in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Just what he brought to the table, because I just felt Darius Gilgar could do like absolutely everything. Take faceoffs, play the man up, play the man down, transition, play phenomenal defense,
punch you in the face,
right? Highly competitive, and then we'll go challenge a bench and say, "Here, I'll just fight every one of you." Yeah, and throw that intimidating factor into it. It's just absolutely phenomenal. He'd be my guy.
Reggie, how about you?
Tough question. Corey Bomberry was always an awesome teammate. Sean Williams, Dewey Jacobs. Any of those guys. And certainly, even Mearnsy just mentioned, Darius. Darius was a warrior, but Dewey Jacobs, Corey Bomberry, Sean Williams. Got to keep it within the Nighthawk family a little bit there, but any of those guys. But we were just very fortunate. We always had great teammates, and tough to pick out any single one. But if I had to, it would probably be Sean Williams.
If you guys had to pick a rivalry that you guys had throughout the National Lacrosse League, whether it was with an individual player or a game or a team, or what was your greatest rivalry story in our game?
For me, that's probably Buffalo. So I think that there was one started my career in Buffalo, ended up in '95 back in Roch. But I felt for myself, a lot of the guys in Buffalo, because that was like the big brother. Rochester was kind of like, the young sibling down the 90 in the small arena. We played all those guys during the summertime, at least for the Canadian guys. And there was nothing like trying to or beating the Buffalo Bandits, because, you've got guys like old school Stevie Fennell going talking about, hey, let's go Buffalo, let's go. And they would just say it over and over and over again during the summertime, because they knew they were playing in the barn with 17,000 people. And you're like, And so for me, that 1997 championship game, when we actually ended up beating them in the Marine Midland, that one's going to stick forever for sure.
Yeah, the last game, that was a good one, 1997, right? That was a good one, Mearnsy. Good one. I would say Buffalo too, Steve. I think also early on it seemed like we had a little something going with the Boston Blazers a little bit. Marty O'Neill, slashing some guys, and it's got a little rough there. We always had stuff with Philly, but Buffalo seemed to be where we get the biggest crowds. Where we all of our fans, Rochester come up to Buffalo, or Buffalo's coming down to Rochester. And then I think towards like the end of my career, it seemed like Toronto a little bit. It seemed like we couldn't get over that hump with Toronto, but then we finally got over the hump there. So, I think that I'd have to agree though, it seems like the mainstay was always Buffalo.
Well, obviously the games that you guys had with Toronto and the old Maple Leaf Garden and not to bring up another overtime loss. Mearnsy, were you in that game?
Yeah. Actually, my son Tanner was born the Friday before the Queen had toxemia, so she was in all kinds of cords and the whole bit. And anyway, she things ended up well. I watched the kid get born. Great. You're there, and then I remember getting up that Saturday morning because it was a matinee in Toronto, that 2000 championship where Caleb Toth ended up jamming one with 1 second left. And God, like you just remember the losses. But I got to tell you, it was the loudest I had ever heard in an arena, in my personal opinion. When Caleb Toth scored that goal in the Maple Leaf Gardens, and again, being a Canadian, the Maple Leaf Gardens was like that's the Holy Land kind of thing. That was the loudest I had ever heard in an arena. And that,
I got to tell you, that's I think probably one of the single greatest legacy games to be remembered in Canadian lacrosse history as a resurrection of large crowds and Maple Leaf Gardens and what that game represented, and obviously them winning. And look, I remember back, and you guys weren't involved in this game, but if you go back to Colorado Mammoth in 2003, our opening game against the Toronto Rock, winning in front of 16,000 people in overtime, double overtime, where Brian Langtree throws one over Bob Watson's shoulder, established the game in Colorado, and it may not have been, the single greatest game in the history of the NLL, but certainly established the market pretty significantly. And I think you can pinpoint that game, Rochester at Toronto, with Caleb Toth winning it as an iconic game in the history of the NLL, an iconic game in the history of the sport in Canada. But you guys were there. Obviously, you didn't care whether it was an iconic game at the time, and the beer probably didn't taste quite as good afterwards. But that one had to be tough. But clearly, as you look back, you guys have been involved in some pretty, iconic games, right? Mearnsy, 98 finals in Baltimore. Those are all games that have defined the sport.
Yeah, I would agree.
Cup.
Yeah, I just kind of feel, you get into those, those opportunities, and the ones that sting. You brought it right off the get-go in '95, down in Philly, and phenomenal crowd, and just taking it to overtime, losing 15-14, and it just lives with you. And '97, which was great for our side. We finally got over the hump. And I kind of felt for myself, in '93, because Buffalo being part of the Bandits, we won that year, but I kind of felt like I had more of a significant role in '97, so it kind of meant a little bit more to me, to myself personally. But then you go to the '99 and the 2000s, and we had such a phenomenal squad. We had John Grant Jr. He just came out of Delaware. We got Casey Pell rolling in. We got Danny Teat and Dewey and Stevie Dietrich's in the nets for us, and Reggie and Jeremy Hollenbeck, and God, we were so good. And just those 2 years, '99 and 2000, we were so close, and it just we just couldn't get over the hump, to the Toronto Rock. But they were legit too, with Colin Doyle and Big Dan Ladouceur and Terry Bolin and Jimmy Veltman. When you look back at those players, and then it's amazing now, you look 20 years down the road, and just guys are in management, guys are coaching, guys are the scouts for all the teams in the league, so to speak. It's just pretty amazing to kind of see that progression, yourself included, by the way.
Yeah, well, I'm illustrious in my own right, but whatever.
Anyway, Reg, what were your thoughts about just that time?
I remember the last game in the Maple Leafs, but I think didn't Casey score it? It was a good goal, and they called it back. And then I think Patty, I don't know if it was Patty Collier, someone lit Casey up. It should have been a 5-minute, and they did
right across the face.
So I remember a couple calls that could have went our way and scored, but that game was unbelievable. I mean, like, it was sold out. I mean, it was loud as heck. I mean, and on the bench there was no plexiglass, so we were on the bench and the fans are right here. And I just remember this guy holding up a sign. It's a sign that says "American beer sucks," and he stood there the whole game and didn't say a word. All he said was "American beer sucks" the whole game. With the sign, but man, the fans were right there. There was no plexiglass, but it was loud. And you look back on it. I know they did something like it was an anniversary of a couple months ago, and to see some clips of that game. I mean, we were right there. I mean, it was tied up. They would lead one, we'd tie it up. I mean, it was back and forth the whole game. So from a fan's perspective, like you said, Steve, iconic game. It was great to be part of it. Hey, you know what? We all play the game in a long time, and coach, you win some, you lose some, right? And it's got to be a loser, which always sucks. But at the end of the day, it was a great game to be part of.
Well, I just had Chris Gill, Dan Stroop, and Russ Hurd on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and we talked about the old Maple Leaf Gardens, and Russ Hurd, who you guys know is an illustrious eater. He was like, the guy would be walking behind us with hot dogs and popcorn, and I'd be like reaching into the guy's popcorn, take my glove off, reach into his popcorn and start eating his popcorn. It was, that was a special building, especially for lacrosse. I can't even imagine what it was like for hockey, but it certainly launched the Toronto Rock into kind of the stratosphere of iconic and masthead franchises for the National Lacrosse League, and it still remains there today. And it's a beauty. I mean, look, I put Rochester. I'm so happy we're back in Rochester because it is the Green Bay Packers of our league, and super excited about that. But you guys have seen the gambit of players in the National Lacrosse League. Who's not in the Hall of Fame that you'd like to put there now?
A lot of good players. A lot of good players.
Who do you think, though, is kind of left out? Reg, present company accepted, because I know I certainly belong there, but maybe anyway, I'm kidding. At the end of the day, Reggie, I think you're certainly a shoe-in for the Hall of Fame and belong there, certainly as a great defender in your own right, but certainly as an American leader and pioneer for the game in the U.S., and I would put you on that list. But who would you put on that list?
I mean, you can. I mean, for American wise, I mean, you got guys like Jay Gilbert and Jake Berge. I mean, those guys filled up the net, played a lot of seasons. Tim Sudan. I mean, there's so many guys. I mean, I saw something on Twitter there a couple of weeks ago, and like a list of guys, and I'm like, there's another 30 guys, right? But again, there's just so many spots there. But at the end of the day, I mean, it'd be great to be in the Hall of Fame, and that's certainly a bonus. But I think just the relationships over the years, I think and the memories, is what I cherish the most.
Unfortunately, mine are waning, so hopefully I need them in writing. You got to put them in the Hall of Fame because the memories go. I've been hitting the head a lot. Mearnsy, how about you? Who would you put into the Hall if you could right now? You got one vote, and that gets him in. Who's the guy?
Well, hopefully he's already not in the Hall of Fame. I would say Dewey Jacobs if he's not already there.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that. I mean, he was just so smooth. Obviously a phenomenal leader in its own right, and I appreciate what Reggie had the 2-man game. But he was pretty much kind of like an unsung hero for our team. Like he was kind of like, and again we had him and Paulie Gate, like. And he just brought so much to the table. And he didn't really speak a lot, but then when, if something needed to be said at that time, when Dewey would all of a sudden say, hey boys, like, let's fucking go. Like next thing you know, it's like, okay, like Dewey spoke. So like, we're doing something either right or wrong. And so let's pick up the shit. I would say Dewey.
Yeah. That's a great point. I agree. I just remember being in like the games when we were winning at the end, and Dewey was always a front door guy. And, the last couple minutes, he would play offense and he'd come back and he would send some, stay-at-home defender, get out, I'm going on defense. And he'd go back with Mearnsy and myself and play D because he wants to be out there the last couple minutes of the game. And he was a gamer. He was a gamer.
We should probably make a shout out to Dewey, of course, who has gone on from his illustrious career as a lacrosse player to become an attorney in his community, and certainly the fantastic things that he does and has moved on to. And so tons of credit and shout out to Dewey. You had mentioned we should have him on the show, but it was too late and I couldn't replace Mearnsy because I would have had to explain it to him. So
Thanks, appreciate that.
No problem.
Another quick break. Coronado Brewing Company is proud to be the official craft beer partner of the Seals. Enjoy fan favorite Orange Avenue Wit and their new Salty Crew Blonde Ale all season long, and visit coronadobrewing.com to find their award-winning beers near you. Stay coastal. Cheers.
So, hey, I'm going to say a name, and I want you guys to just respond with kind of whatever comes to your mind about that guy. Jeremy Hollenbeck.
Energizer Bunny. Didn't stop.
Utility, offense, defense. He reminds me of Connor Kelly now. I mean, he's plays just like him, can play both ends of the floor, ground balls, score, play defense, but utility guy. He could do anything.
Tim Sudan.
Hard nose, wants to rock when the game's on the line. Loved him. Good leader. Phenomenal leader.
Just awesome teammate, awesome guy. Just a grit guy, man. And again, both ways, old school two-way like Mearns.
Timmy Sudan about to go into the PLL bubble. By the time we air this, he will be in the bubble as the head coach of the Chrome, right? I think that's his new team. So excited to see Tim Sudan in his debut with the PLL. That's exciting stuff for lacrosse in the middle of the COVID. So I'm sure we're all going to be glued to NBC watching the PLL. So pump for him and pump for all those guys. Casey Powell.
I feel as he developed, he was the best offensive American player. Mm-hmm. Just absolutely, like as he got used to the box lacrosse game and the things that you just watch him do, both hands behind the back, swims, flips, absolutely phenomenal.
I agree. And you're talking about that all-star game in Rochester, Mearns. Remember the skills, he did some like weird thing and ended up scoring. It was on Whipper or Dallas Alec or someone there scoring there. But yeah, I mean he's franchise. That's what I think. I mean,
so I see him as a
gamer,
as my top Hall of Fame guy. Casey Powell, Jake Berge, couple. I mean, I got to play with Jake Berge, of course, but that list, like you said, is so long. But Casey's got to be near the top of that list. Another guy that's probably near the top of a Hall of Fame list, John Grant Jr.
Magic. Just magic.
Franchise. He won me a championship in 2007. He's a playmaker, man. He's just, I mean, to have him on our team all those years is just, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, the best.
He's so good. He's been retired for 5 years from the Mammoth, and they're still showing his fucking videos.
Oh. Well, and he's still he's still doing it in the MLL. Like you watch the stuff that he's still doing. Like it's absolutely insane on how gifted, and what he can do with a lacrosse stick. But that's the same thing though. It's he's always playing with the lacrosse stick. It's just absolutely amazing.
The guy that you guys played against, and he's been mentioned before here, is Jim Veltman.
Scoop.
Yep.
Ground balls.
Ground balls, phenomenal leader, will to win, and he was a big part of those championship teams. I mean, they had a phenomenal and solid team in Toronto, but he was the catalyst. I remember getting the opportunity in '93 playing in Buffalo with Jim and with JT, and they'd already kind of developed. Hey, off the face-off, the ball's going to come here. I'm just going to one-time it, not look at you, flip it over, and then JT's just going to go run under it and then go score a breakaway goal. They just already seen what was going to happen before it would, and just actually revolutionary.
Yeah, and the energy, right? I mean, he was the Energizer Bunny. I mean, he would just every ground ball, right? I mean, to see his ground ball stats and after a game was unbelievable.
And it kind of felt like he always played with a hook in his stick too, because he always had to kind of short hop it.
Well, a lot of times I don't know if he even had shooting strings in there. It was
right.
Well, I'm pretty sure though the Toronto Rock, he was paying the stat guy to give him more loose balls than everybody else. That's such a disparaging comment to Jimmy Veltman's unbelievable career. And Brody Merrill just recently broke his record, I think. I mean, I think what people don't understand is that all the records that a lot of guys set in our era of National Lacrosse League and the Major Indoor Lacrosse League, we played 8 games a year. Right. Early on, we played 8 games. And the numbers that guys were putting up, like Gary and Paul putting up numbers like 6 or 7 or 8 points a game, right, was unbelievable. And if they played 16 games back then, if we had played those 16 games, I'm not sure if a lot of the stats would have been broken.
Well, and you even kind of think back when we played, a lot of it was still up, back, and off. I mean, there was the couple of the guys that kind of did the front door and started to evolve into that. But could you imagine Gary Gay, Paul Gay, JT, and it kind of got to JT's end of the career where, listen, you're just on the floor every offensive shift. You just get to play offense every shift.
You're playing against 5 guys like Regy that their sole purpose in life is to kill you. So offensively, it's harder today. Like, with all due respect, I mean, anybody going out back in the day playing defense, you had to play defense or you had to play offense against guys like Tom Marichek and Kevin Finneran. I mean, even I got to score a few goals when I was playing against guys like that.
Yeah, it's and then you kind of look at the league as it is now, and maybe not necessarily for Regy, but for small guys like me, I go in. And you get to go do with the Bandits Broadcasting, and you get to go down and below. And you look at the size of these guys now, there's no way. How do you even survive? They're all 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". These defensive guys and they're the same guys every offensive shift or every defensive shift. It's I wouldn't survive. Be a short career, I think.
We haven't talked about your broadcasting career, by the way, as a color guy. You might be the most colorful color guy in the league.
I appreciate that. I don't know. I get into it. I got a great play-by-play guy with Gertz, and then every time I want to say something, I punch him in the shoulder, and then he lets me just kind of do my thing.
And then you have to read text from me all game long about how you're screwing up the rules.
Well, I got to try to get better at the rules. But see, that's why I can count on guys like you, but the best part about, from, you retire in 2003 and getting the opportunity to kind of do it is you just get to talk about the amazing things that at the time when I early retired, with your friends and what they're doing on the floor, and then you kind of, as the time kind of went along and you get a little bit longer in the tooth and you got the next generation coming in and you get to kind of try to describe, some of the amazing things that they do on the floor. I'm blessed to be able to have the opportunity to do it, honestly.
Regy, how proud were you when you watched your son kind of suit up for the first time in a league that you played in, that I know you have a lot of regard for?
Yeah. I mean, it was great. Anytime, you can suit up with your son. I mean, that, Steve, I think probably my best memories though were probably, our summer league field team, playing with my brother and then our kids, throughout the last summers, the last 10 summers besides this summer. But be able, just to be on the field and playing with them was certainly special. But then just watching them, it's certainly special and see how they grow. And it was fun because he was always in the locker room with us, and he wanted to be John Grant Jr. and trying to do his stick tricks and all that stuff. So certainly the guys are always really good to him, and that's part of the Nighthawk family, right? You take care of your own kids, and I think to have all the kids around the locker room throughout the years was a lot of fun.
I'm going to throw one more name at you, and I know he's pretty close to you, Reg, but Marshall Abrams, who you've stood shoulder to shoulder with for a long time in this game as a fellow coach and a fellow player, and I'm pretty sure you guys played at Syracuse together, didn't you?
No, he's younger than me. I coached Marshall in high school when he was at Lafayette. He used to play man up with a long pole for me because he could just rip it, and then he was supposed to go to Hobart, and I saw this kid play, and I called up Coach Simmons at Syracuse. I said, "This kid's got to, wear orange at Syracuse." He ended up going to Syracuse, but then I got to play with him. He was with the Columbus Land Sharks, and then he ended up getting traded to Rochester. So I got to play with him, and then having coached with him, in the NLL and also in Six Nations for so many years. So it was great. I got to coach him, play with him, and then coach with him was pretty cool. But his lacrosse IQ is just off the charts. He's smooth. I mean, his first year in his league, I think he put up 35, 40, 45 points for the Columbus Land Sharks playing offense. And then he got to us. We were, we had Mearnsy and Dewey and we had a lot of offensive guys. So, he ended up playing, kind of transition and backdoor for us. But he's just smooth. I mean, he did it in college. He was unbelievable. Defender of the year in college, defender of the year. Syracuse won a couple national championships and then won some championships in Rochester with us. So it was awesome to have him.
I tell you what, when I get a sponsor for this show, I'm going to start giving out prizes for guys who name teams that have never been named before. And I think you just won by naming the Columbus Land Sharks. But for the first time on the TFL podcast, the Columbus Land Sharks have made the show. So when I get a sponsor, you're the first guy to get a prize.
Wasn't Dan Dawson played there too, or was it Brody?
Dan Dawson, 6th round draft pick for the Columbus Land Sharks.
Oh, okay.
I think Mark Stanos was there as well.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Best story about the Columbus Land Sharks, and you guys remember Mike Gongas as an owner in our league. He owned the New York Saints, and then he also took on the Columbus Land Sharks, and he would collect all the guys' backup sticks after games, and he'd keep them because he was so cheap that he didn't want them to take home their backup sticks because he was going to use them for a camp the next day.
I'm going to get that dues into you too. Let me get that. I'm sending that check out.
Exactly.
Another guy in Roch that I thought, just again, I think just dedication that always really impressed me was an American player, and it's Patty Kugovin. Because for 3 or 4 years, he was a practice player. Because back in the day, we had the practice player, but he wasn't there yet. He couldn't make it into the lineup yet. And, as you're coaching, like you need to win or you could be out of a coaching job. But he just stayed after it and after it and after it, and then kind of became the other foundation, along with Marshall, with Regy, as kind of like these two gargantuan defensive guys. I mean, Regy, you probably can speak probably more to it, but he was one of the guys as a practice roster that just kept on trying to get better and better and better. And I always respected that of Patty. I mean, and finally getting into the lineup and then actually, competing and winning.
He ended up playing 10 years, and Pat and I played together at Syracuse. Now he was steady at it, not flashy, but boy, I know Colin Doyle used to hate playing against him. So but he ended up going practice squad, I think 1 or 2 years, and then playing 10 active years. So he had a great career and certainly an unsung hero for sure, and an unbelievable player and teammate.
So for all those guys out there that want to play in the National Lacrosse League and they don't want to start on the practice roster because they were the star of their team in college or high school or whatever, your advice to them would be suck it up, Buttercup. Get on the practice squad, learn the game, right?
Learn the game, yeah, absolutely. Because I think back in the day as well, that's what kind of ended up happening. If you're on the practice roster, you didn't get into a game, and then the next year you just weren't really around anymore. And that's where with Patty, he just kept on coming back and basically saying fuck that, I'm making this team, and and then had a 10-year career from it.
Yeah, Casey Zapp, he was a practice player in Buffalo and got, ended up coming out to Rochester, and he played up to his injury there. He was unbelievable for us.
It's funny you say Casey Zapp, because I was literally just going to bring him up and say a few words about Casey Zapp, because obviously a tragic end to his career with what he suffered, but ultimately I am hearing that he is coming out of it and functioning in life and doing quite well. And so shout out to Casey Zaff.
Yeah, he just got a coach of the year for his league there. I'm not sure if it was lacrosse or what sport it was, because he coaches his school a couple different sports. But Casey was awesome, and it's funny. I saw on Twitter with the PLL guys and some MLL guys, they're all chirping about why would a kid wear a helmet in warmups, and anyone from Canada, or even played in the NLL, even a lot of Americans don't know, but we were in Philadelphia there, and Casey was out there for warm-ups and, got hit with a ball in the head, and that's all it started. He couldn't play that game, So, people were on Twitter there, I think it was 3 or 4 days ago, back and forth, oh, it's stupid to wear, blah, blah, blah. I felt like chiming in, but I don't do that. But I'm just like, anyone who knows, it's you just never know, right? And to be there and witness Casey getting hit, and then what happened afterwards is just, fighting for his life, and he's got his family, and it's not a bad thing to wear a helmet in a warm up. So hopefully the people will get some sense, right?
So
I close the show with the same question, and some might say I ask all the same questions anyway, and mainly because I want to hear the different questions answered by different guys. But I did ask. It was quite funny actually. I asked this question a couple times, and one of the guys said, "I don't watch TV. I don't know what this is." So the question was tough. But you guys, I'm sure, are 30 for 30 guys on ESPN, and if you could do a 30 for 30 about the National Lacrosse League, about our history in the mill, about lacrosse in general, what would your 30 for 30 be, Reg?
That's a good question. I didn't see that one on the thing, but
I know it's a great question because you didn't go to the bottom.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I always love like the 30 for 30 is the one on ESPN with Belichick and the coaches. So maybe like a Les Bartley or something. I've heard so much great things, amazing things about Les Bartley and his kind of coaching tree of all these great coaches, and some that I've played for and never really knew the guy, but heard nothing but great things. But maybe like a coaching documentary on him or 30 for 30 would be pretty cool.
Mearnsy, how about you?
Yeah. I think it would be with Gary and Paul Gate, and specific to the NLL, the MLL, and what their contribution was, and and having relationships with the owners back in the day with Russ Klein and Chris Fitz, and not knowing what that was, but what they meant to the sport to actually get it continually more and more professional and more off the ground, because that Eagle League and the MLL, all those early days, hey, they were the like in some sense, they were the attraction. I mean, that's Gary Gate and that's Paul Gate and advising and then the owners and the whole bit, because you got to have those players to continue to evolve the to evolve the league. I mean, I just think that it would be great to be the fly on the wall in terms of a lot of those conversations back in the day of going like, wow, how can we help influence this to move this forward, to give a guy like me, hey, an opportunity to play. I think that would be an awesome documentary for sure.
Yeah, plus for the young guys, the current players to see, right? Because now they're, it's seems so much more about money in that, Steve, better than anyone, right? And it'd be cool to have them go back to the heydays, right? When the grassroots guys of what they were doing to make ends meet to be able to play, and then that transition from the MILL to the NLL.
Well, Paul was on the podcast early on and told the story of kind of how the NLL turned to how the mill turned into the NLL in the summer of 1997, and just the premise of that particular pinpoint in history of how it really changed the game for all of us. And and Paul was a huge part of that. I mean, just a massive part of that, and obviously Gary as well. But I've really enjoyed spending time with you guys. It's been a ton of fun. It's great to tell the old stories of the game, and hopefully we can get more people engaged and talking about it. But best of luck in Pittsburgh, Reg, and with the new women's gig you got going there, and obviously with Team USA, we look for big things for all those players in the future. And I know you got a ton of kids coming out of Colorado and Ohio, and a bunch of kids that you're gonna get to choose from in the not too distant future. And the U.S. indoor game is coming, and I'm super excited to watch for that, because I think we need that without question to help grow our game as we continue to expand in the West and the Southwest and all over the U.S. The National Lacrosse League is looking for you to do big things to develop those players for us in the future, and I'm excited about that. So, Reg, good luck. Mearnsy, to the Bonnies. Hopefully you get back on the field and I get to see your students in the fall here, and I'm looking forward to watching for big things for you up in New York.
Yeah, appreciate it, Steve. Thanks for having me on, and keep this thing going. Love it. I listen to the podcast, so I might be one of the few, but it'll
so you're the guy.
It'll continue to get better and better and better.
You're like the Canadian Navy. We only got one ship, but you're the one.
Thanks for having us, Steve. Appreciate it. Mearnsy,
All
always
right,
good catching up.
Reggie, good catching up, brother.
We'll talk soon.